Welcome to Move Your Mind. My name's Nick Bracks, and this is a podcast where we have real conversations with real people and give real advice. Jamie Mitchel is a former Australian under-19s cricketer who now works at Autism Australia in a support coordination role. Jamie courageously shared with me that he's been living with bottled up stress and PTSD for decades, after he was the victim of a traumatic incident that occurred while on a tour of India and Sri Lanka when he was 18. He has recently spoken out publicly about his sexual assault and the lack of support available for male survivors of sexual violence. Jamie was open, vulnerable, and honest in discussing the impact it's had on himself and those around him. His story shines a light on the importance of creating an open conversation around men's mental health and male sexual abuse. Jamie, so nice to meet you, mate. I feel very lucky that our mutual friend Chambo, who I've interviewed twice on here now, introduced us. And I say this so often, but it's one of my favorite parts of the podcast, just getting to connect with people like yourself that I wouldn't have met otherwise and have these conversations. And you've got your own story that we're going to share today. So really appreciate you making the time to come on.
Thanks, Nick. No, it's a wonderful opportunity to talk to yourself. And yes, our mutual friend Pete Chambers, who you've interviewed a couple of times now, is inspirational fellow, and talked to me about you a little while ago, and I didn't really twig. And I think at that point I wasn't really in the right headspace to do anything apart from just work with the journalists at the time and the federal police and all the other stuff that were going on, because there's a full-on investigation. So now is a good time to start doing stuff like this, because I think there's a message there that needs to get out, and forums like this one seems to be a tasteful, appropriate way to do it. So no, I'm really glad to be with you today.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. No, well, yeah, really, really appreciate that. So I guess before we jump in, can you give, just for our listeners to learn a bit more about you, can you give a bit of a background on yourself and just how you came to be where you are today?
Sure. So 1985, I was picked in the Victorian under-19 cricket team, went to Hobart for the national championships. These championships happen every year. Had a good carnival. As a result of that, got picked in the Australian under-19 team, and that Australian under-19 team went to India and Sri Lanka for 8 weeks across February and March 1985. So at the time, probably the biggest thrill of my life. I mean, get to play for your country, all it's really good. 16 young cricketers who were obviously very talented, great opportunity. Were we ready to go to India and Sri Lanka? No. Were we prepared to go to India and Sri Lanka? No. I ended up going there and come back the victim of a rape by the team doctor. So it's okay to talk about that because it's all out in the open now. The problem was that coming back from that 1985 tour, I always suspected something happened on that tour, that something bad happened on that tour. But I didn't know what it was. I just wasn't sure. So for a couple of decades, really, probably 3 decades, there's a lot of this innuendo, a lot of talk in the background. For instance, when I came back from that tour in 1985, you'd be playing grade cricket. After the game, you'd go to, most clubs have a bar at that point, have a few beers with the opposition, and it wouldn't be unusual for someone to say, "What happened with you in India? What happened to you?" And I'd say, I don't know, mate. I don't know what you're talking about. So this would become, it bugged me. It really did bug me that people would come up and say, what happened with you and the coach in India? What's the story with you two? And you would just say something like, mate, if you know something, please tell me, because I don't know. I've got no idea what you're talking about. So after a while, that wears you down. And there's this question, it becomes self-fulfilling. So you start to think, well, fuck, what did happen to me in India? What don't I know? What did happen? So one night, about 2 years ago now, I was just flicking through Facebook, I think it was, and there was a picture of the Australian 19 team picture that was taken in New Delhi. We only had the one official team photo. And there it was, just flashed up before me. It took me by surprise. And I stopped and read it, and someone had penned an article, and the article, for want of a better term, was return on investment. It's probably the best way to put it. So an under-19 team, if you get one player that comes out of that ends up playing for Australia, that's a pretty good return. That's not bad. We had 5, and then we had another 7, I think, that played first-class cricket. So from a return on investment, out of 16 players, for 12 of them to go on and play for their country or their state is a hell of an effort. So it underlines how strong that team was. But that particular era, and some of those names went on to be the names that dominated world cricket for the next 10 years. As I read that story, I couldn't pick fault with the facts of that story. That was true. But something just exploded in my head saying, that's not the story of that tour. That's not the story that people need to know about that tour. They need to know about the fact that the coach would bring, little boys to his room and take photographs of them in the nude, and we would be exposed to things that we should never have been exposed to. And even though we would talk to the team manager saying, why are those kids in that room? What's going on? We were getting assurances at the time that that's all under control. They, the Australian Cricket Board, know about it. So someone knew something, but it was condoned. I mean, as they say, silence is complicity. Well, there was a lot of silence going on. So I responded in a post that was responded to a post which ended up sliding door moment, getting a call from an old retired journalist, a bloke called Ron Reid, who used to be the editor of the Herald Sun, The Hound. He rang to say, you better take that down. You can't go calling people pedophiles and things like that. And I said, well, mate, it's true. So anyway, that conversation ended up being, I asked Ron, someone's got to do a story. Someone's got to tell this story. Someone's got to blow it out. Got to blow it up. That's all. Excuse me. This cover-up can't go on for any longer. It's just there are people that are still around that, heads of boards and so on that were at the Australian Cricket Board back at that time that allowed this to happen. So Ron introduced me to a bloke called Russell Jackson, who's a ABC journalist and amazing human being for a start, but incredible journalist second. And Russell and I started working, and after about 12 months, we had a story which was published ABC Online, which I guess it brings me to why I'm here today, because I needed to get some answers. I needed to find out what happened, and the most compelling thing, I think, was there was what I remember of that tour up until the article being published, and then there was what I knew happened on that tour after the article was published, and they're two very different things. So now I'm dealing with what I know, not what I remember, and what I know ends up not being very pleasant. But if not for Russell being his dogged, determined self, we wouldn't have uncovered what we think, what we know happened. So it's been a long journey, but it's been worthwhile, because in your quieter moments, and Russell did say when we started working that, because this is the sort of journalism he does, and it's not very pleasant journalism. It's can take you into really dark places. But as Russell says, if you can do this sort of journalism, you have to, because not everyone can. So I sort of took that mantra on myself, and I thought, well, if you can do this, if you can call out these big institutions for reprehensible behaviour, even though it might be 37 years ago, if you can, I think you have to. You can't be complicit in it by just being silent. So, and I knew my life would change, and it did, and it has, and it does every day, because things do change. So you're dealing with things that you didn't know about your life that, and I don't want to be identified by this, but there is a part of you that is identified by what happened. But now my mission now is to say to blokes out there that it's okay to disclose. I mean, if shit's happened to you 40 years ago, you don't need to keep it pent up anymore. You'll be believed now. Those days of not being believed, they're gone. Hopefully they're gone.
Yeah.
So the message there is it's okay to disclose, because you will get that support. So in the quieter moments, I take comfort in the fact that there's been over 100 blokes who, as a direct result of reading that story, have come forward and disclosed. So
Wow.
that's something I'm very proud of. I hope it's made a difference to their lives. And so by doing a podcast like this, to be able to get that message out, it might reach the ears of one bloke who's been keeping a secret for a long time, thinking, fuck this, I've had enough. It's time to do something about it. So yeah, so that's why I'm here today. So it's just a bit of a wrap up of that story. It's ongoing. I need to be very, very clear in that the current day Cricket Australia administration are not responsible for what happened back in 1985. I need to be very clear about that. And I'm working with Cricket Australia, who I believe are genuine in wanting to learn from what happened. I've been working with them directly, with the CEO and the head of integrity there. They want a good story to come out of this. So do I. So there's things that we're talking about. Does it guarantee this sort of thing can never happen again? No, it doesn't. But it makes it very difficult for someone with intentions like that to carry them out. If anything, it will increase the governance procedures at Cricket Australia. And this isn't just cricket. There's also, name the sport, we've all got the same issues. It might increase the governance procedures that, particularly in volunteer sports, where you'll get people that want to volunteer to be around young kids and so on. The question really needs to be, well, why is that? I mean, is it a genuine interest in helping to, be the goal umpire, or are there other? And it's horrible to even say this, but this is where it's sort of taken me that very difficult to trust people. I mean, and that's not a nice way to live. You want to be able to trust people, but there's reasons why there's issues of trust there these days, particularly around volunteering in sports clubs. So I think the tighter frameworks are the better.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram at @NickBracks. I really appreciate your ongoing support. Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think it is so important that we are aware of that, and we need to, obviously not lose trust in everyone, but also be more diligent about actually thinking about these things that we probably would not have thought about in the past, and probably wouldn't think about if people like yourself weren't coming out and sharing these stories. And I think it's incredibly brave that you're out there sharing this, and it's really powerful. And I think that there's nothing more sort of more powerful that you can do than share these stories, especially as a man, because the amount of people that are holding on to things, that are feeling shame, that are embarrassed to talk about whatever it is, whether it's a mental health issue, whether it's something they've experienced, or whatever they're going through, you can't really move forward with your life if you're bottling these things up. And we need to talk about it, and it's just part of the process and part of us healing and helping each other. And I think it just sets such an example. So I think you will be genuinely changing so many people's lives directly through this process, but also indirectly through all of the men out there that are bottling up so many different issues. And I see it, time and time again, talking in companies that are, male dominated, and, often suicides are occurring, and people don't talk about it. And it's crazy. It's great that it is more talked about now, but I think also because mental health has become a more talked about issue in general in society, we sort of accept that, okay, it must be okay now, but that we've only touched the surface really of where we need to go. So yeah, I think it's amazing what you're doing.
There's a couple of points you raised here, Nick, that are really important. One is, and thanks for saying that you think it's a bold, I think courageous is the word you used. And when the story came out, that was generally, there were lots of people that reached out, and they were the words they'd use. So it's very brave, very courageous of you. And I'm not disputing that. It is, but in a way, inside, I actually don't think it is, because all I've done is actually pick up a piece of paper off the floor that should have been picked up a long time ago. So that's a bit of a strange analogy, but if those in charge at the Australian Cricket Board, as it was known then, they knew about that Mars bar wrapper, can of Coke, whatever, on the floor there. They knew it was there, but no one decided to pick it up. And because no one picked it up, that's why the opportunity for what happened to me was allowed to happen. So you don't need to be brave or courageous to pick up the Coke can. You do need to show some leadership. That's true. And the second thing is that there's a case going through the courts at the moment. There's a bloke called Adam Neal who's suing the Footscray Football Club. Now, Adam is in court at the moment because my article was published at 6:10 on a Sunday morning. At 8:50, Russell Jackson received an email from a bloke called Adam who'd read the story about that bloke, me, and wanted to do something. So that was 2 years ago, and today they're sitting in court, and hopefully Adam one day will get his soon. We'll see some justice. So the message there is, if not for the action of going through and working with Russell to get as uncomfortable as it was going to be, if there's proof that there's at least one bloke out there who has, hopefully, will change his life, because his story is truly horrendous.
Yeah.
If people want to read it, they can read it, but it's awful. But to know that Adam read my story, then contacted Russell. So I take a lot of that makes me feel good that there's that one bloke out there who hopefully will get justice for the horrible things that happened to him. So you're quite right.
Yeah.
Brave, courageous, yes, I guess so. But at the end of the day, to me, it's more like being like an active bystander. So you can sit by and watch things happen and choose to think, oh, I won't get involved in that. It looks a bit messy. It's going to require some effort. And unfortunately, because here's a huge generalisation, people are generally lazy. They may choose that path. But that's the reason why this sort of shit happens and people's lives get turned around, because they're not prepared to pick up the Coke can. They'll wait for someone else to pick it up, or that's the cleaner's job, or wait for the next bloke to walk past it, they'll pick it up. But they won't. They might, but they won't. If they don't, that's when these things accumulate and people's lives get ruined.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you're saying, people, that laziness is, most people don't want to be out of their comfort zone, or if something's confronting, if we have an option a lot of the time to avoid having to confront it, people will. And that might be the short term, you might feel less uncomfortable in the short term, but it's going to create a problem longer term. So there's no way around that. We just need to learn, it's part of this education process when it comes to anything in this area. We need to learn to be more uncomfortable, to be able to be more vulnerable, and to, address things that we don't want to talk about. How difficult was it for you following, that incident happening at such a young age, and then, I guess, bottling it up for all of those years? Did that have a range of different impacts on your life, or was it sort of compartmentalized, or was it something you thought about regularly? How was that process for you?
Well, I didn't know what had happened until Russell started writing the story. I knew something bad had happened, but I didn't know what it was. But until Russell, the day that he rang to say that he's got confirmation that the coach is a pedophile, that changed everything. Because up till that point, the very first day I met Russell, started working with him, I said, don't waste any time on the doc, he's fine. And Russell's words to me were, when you've been doing this sort of stuff as long as I have, everyone's on the table until they drop off for good reason. And I thought, geez, what a horrible way to live your life. And he said, well, mark my words, we're finished. And he's right. He was absolutely right.
Wow.
So the good old doc was not the good old doc. The good old doc was a bad person, and happened to be the president of the AMA for 6 years as well. So they talk about trust. So we had, so I didn't know what I was actually dealing with, apart from all this shit sort of circulating around with people saying, what happened with you in India? So it wasn't until Russell did the did the digging. And of course, once you start digging, you can't put the dirt back in the hole. You can't just put your hands up and say, look, that's enough, no more. You've got to keep going. And you do. We come across stuff that I'd probably prefer not to know, but but now we know it, so I had to deal with it. So things didn't really change until, I think that's that time, that point in time where what I remember up to the story being published, and then or working with Russell, and then what I know. So they're two different things. So the last 2.5 years has been a whirlwind of having to deal with stuff that I had no idea that had been there for 37 years. I mean, probably the most difficult thing was that my parents were told about this 37 years ago, but they didn't tell me.
Oh, wow.
So they kept that a secret for whatever reason. Yeah, I think we'll ever get to the bottom of that one. But so they decided not to say anything. So you've got a few things going on to deal with there.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess that's a generational thing from your parents' side, where they would have thought they're being protective of you and it's the best thing, but it's again comes back to this educational piece of this is systemic, isn't it? You know, we really need to change this whole conversation.
I agree. I mean, it's different times. I understand that, but rape is rape. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it was 85 or 2023. It's still rape.
Oh god,
so
yeah.
It's still wrong. So one day, I hope and again, just emphasising, this has got nothing to do with the current day Cricket Australia administration, because I believe they're doing some good work, and I believe they want to get things right. I really do. So it goes back to that 1985 administration that I'd just like to know who knew what when they knew it, and what was going through your mind not to intervene, because it was obviously a cover-up that they thought, well, no one's ever going to look under this carpet. Well, they have, and they found some nasty stuff there. So I'd just like to see those that had the hands on the levers in 1985 who are still alive show some accountability, a bit of pain for what they've done. But it's out of the courts now, so it'll legally nothing can happen. But it would be just nice to know who knew what and when and why. Why'd you cover it up?
Yeah, it'd be nice closure on it. And so no one from that time has come out and that did cover it up, has come and talked about it.
Russell interviewed them.
Oh,
I made contact with the CEO at the time. A couple of voice messages, a couple of text messages, just got flat battered. That's just total denial. Yeah. So, but they can deal with that. I mean, they can. I mean, it's in the article now. They can deal with that. They can. The article itself got through 3 legals and 3 senior editors at the ABC. So it's. And that's the other interesting thing about this story. The stories behind the story is actually more interesting than the story, if it makes sense, because there are so many sliding door moments, so many opportunities, so many quotes that at the time were a bit flippant, but actually turned out to be really important. One significant one was, so the night before we came home was the night I was drugged by the doctor. I wasn't feeling too good, and we had we were being farewelled at the embassy, the Australian embassy in Colombo, and we had to be there by 6 o'clock. And at about 5 o'clock, I was just crook, so I was just lying down and asked my roommate to go and get the doc and come and see me. So the roommate did. I remember the doc coming in, but no roommate. At the time, I didn't think anything of it. And then I got injected. Eyes went heavy. That's all I know. So 12 hours later, I'm just being suspended under a shower by 4 big gorilla fast bowlers and getting dressed because we're going to get on a plane to go home, and I'm just going in and out of consciousness. So if not for one of the ABC lawyers asking the question that what happened to the doctor after coming to see me, we wouldn't have found out that I was actually quarantined for 12 hours. No one thought to ask that question. So going back to ring 4 or 5 of the boys to ask the question, 37 years ago, can you remember when the doctor left the embassy to go and see me? Did he come back to the embassy, back to the party? No one could remember. So I rang 4 blokes, couldn't remember it. The last bloke I rang, just before we hung up, said, anyway, we were too busy trying to find somewhere for your mate to sleep. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we were trying to find somewhere for your roommate to sleep. And I thought, no one's ever told me that. So I rang my roommate and said, that night, where did you go? And he said, I was told not to come back to the room because it's been quarantined because we don't know what's wrong with you. So I had to go and sleep in another room. No one thought to ask that question except that lawyer. So that little moment there.
Wow.
We wouldn't have had the doctor in the frame if not for asking that question. So there's lots of little incidents like that. It's quite extraordinary, really. And I'll write a book one day, but it won't be about the tour or what actually happened. It's more about that story behind the story because it's actually quite fascinating. But it's interesting because I've read that story 4 times now, and each time you read it, and it's a long read, but each time you read it, I feel you hear yourself say, "Gee, poor bastard! What a horrible thing to happen!" And then you got to slap yourself across the head and think, "It's your story." So it's like it's like being disassociated. It's like you're watching a play, but you're sitting up on the balcony, but you're one of the lead actors, but you're up there watching yourself on stage. I don't know whether that makes sense, but it's a really weird thing. It's a really weird thing, odd thing. I think it's a protection thing, I guess. But yeah.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast and want to learn more, I've released my first book, Move Your Mind: How to Build a Healthy Mindset for Life, where I talk about my own journey with mental health and share tips from experts on how to maintain a healthy mindset. You can buy the book on Amazon or through my website at nickbracks.com/book. Yeah, partially, maybe a protection coping mechanism thing, partially because it's such a long time ago and you didn't even have the answers until now. But yeah, it would be just such a bizarre experience to go through. Yeah.
I mean, I've got some vivid memories, but I would go to sleep at night sort of punishing yourself to think beyond the feeling of the stab of the needle into your hip, think beyond that, and your eyes getting heavy. And I've got nothing. I just can't think of anything. And I'll be up till 2 o'clock in the morning, sort of forcing yourself and thinking, this is bullshit. You can't just forget stuff like that. You're not working hard enough. It's got to be in there. Until one day, a psychiatrist, I had to do a couple of assessments for what was going to be the trial. And at the end of the session, the psychiatrist said, I think I've got what I need now to do the report. Is there anything else? And I said, look, I know you're not my treating psychiatrist. You're an assessing psychiatrist, but this sort of thing happens every night. And he stopped me and said, tonight, do me a favour. Tonight, don't do that, because whatever he's injected you with has had that specific purpose and function of removing whatever memory was there. You will never get it back. You cannot get it back. No one had ever told me that before. So the difference that I've been 8 months, I've been going through this, getting 3 or 4 hours sleep, and that night slept like a log. And the difference it made after that was incredible. But maybe I didn't ask the question, but no one had ever mentioned that you're not going to get that memory back. So don't try to find it. It's not there.
Yeah, exactly. It comes back to what we were talking about before we started recording, with what Peter Chambers talks about with the train tracks analogy and focusing on what we can control. If we're sitting there trying to obsess about things that we never are going to be able to get an answer to, we're never going to be able to control. We'll just drive ourselves crazy if we do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give Cricket Australia credit at the moment. They do want to turn things around. I genuinely believe that. The relationship with Cricket Australia is better now than what it was. It started off on a rough patch, but we've talked through that. So there may be a role there going forward in working with their integrity unit to work with players, umpires, match officials, anyone that comes under that Cricket Australia banner, really, about that message around integrity, getting that message strong. And it's really about picking up that piece of paper. That,
Yeah.
take the opportunity to pick that piece of paper up, because it actually feels good when you do it. That there's some satisfaction out of picking up that paper and looking around and think, actually, the street's quite beautiful now that I've picked it up, and I'm the one that
Yeah.
actually picked it up. There's some satisfaction in that. There really is. It's hard. It's as simple as that. It's not complicated. It's
Yeah.
really not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it's super interesting what you're saying with that sliding doors moment where
Mm,
so easily you could have just never found that piece of information, and then it
mm,
remains unsolved. And
yep.
it's terrifying to think how many situations are there that have happened and that are happening in all walks of life all over the place, where similar things are just being swept
Yep.
under the rug, and the people involved, the victims, don't
Mm,
even know what's happened, or they're not knowing how to deal with it, how to look into it. It's just, yeah, it's really scary, and it's things we don't know because it
mm.
is not talked about. So it's just, yeah, again, really comes back to how critical it is that people like yourself are setting this example and putting this information out there, because it will, as you've already experienced, like you were saying, other people will come out and probably deal with their own version of what they're going through.
And I think you're spot on. And I mean, I haven't done this alone. There's two significant people in this. I mean, Russell Jackson, I mean, I've got two very good people in my corner that saw the injustice of what had happened and were prepared to fight, to work with me. I mean, Russell's ability to write to that level. I mean, that's extraordinary to have him on your side. And also Michael Magazanik from Right Side Legal is the lawyer, and Michael takes on those cases that lawyers wouldn't be lining up to take. I mean, they're the horrible, terrible ones. So, and again, like Russell, if you can do the work, you've got to do the work, because you just have to. Someone's got to do it. So to have those two people in my corner and all along the way was really helpful, and just getting support from people. And it's an interesting thing. You'll get people that contact you, and they might not know what to say because they're not quite sure what to say. So it might be a little text saying, "Hi mate, just thinking about, read the story, Jesus, it's horrible, blah blah blah." And you'll get others that won't contact you for quite a while, and then they'll contact you to say, "I didn't know whether you wanted to talk about it, or didn't know whether you." I'd find, and I'm making an assumption here, Nick, that with your own story there, it actually helps to talk about it. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this podcast. I think talking about it helps. It certainly helps me.
Massively.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I know
Yeah.
it's helped. I know it's helped Pete, talking to Pete about it, and I know his first interview with you was it solidified a lot of things in his mind, and it certainly helped. Yeah, definitely.
Absolutely. And,
Mm,
I think that's the thing. I always have said, and I fell into, had my own backstory and it played out in the media. And I randomly fell into a situation where I was getting asked to talk at schools and share my story. And I was finding not only I was seeing, so many kids going and, getting help, reporting back that story helped provide a little spark for them to go and take that step, but
mm,
at the same time it was helping me probably even more or as
yep,
much. And
yep,
I always talk about that. I think it's really important to realize that by doing this, by sharing stories, we're going to be helping ourselves as much as other people, so it's a win-win. And I've been working in this area for a long time now, but I haven't seen anything as powerful as storytelling, because that's
mm,
how we relate to each other. That's how we,
yep,
when we put society more than ever now, especially with social media and all the false information out in the world, we
mm,
we sort of see a facade of what's happening, but we don't really hear the humanity of a lot of things, and that's what we need more than ever. So you know, it can really change lives, and it's just such an important thing.
Yeah, no, I agree that role of mentorship, particularly young males. I work in the support coordination space as a support coordinator. I work with autistic individuals, so quite often you're dealing with situations where dad's not there anymore. He hasn't been there for quite a while, so
Mm.
a lot of behaviour is communication, as they say. So, which I think is true, but just not having that strong, assertive male role model at home. That's where good support workers can play a role, not just to take kids out to the pitches and things like that. It's much more than that. It's more even just learning how to talk to women with respect, learning how to talk to elderly people with respect, learning how to respect other people's property, learning how to be on time for appointments. All these sort of things that good support workers can help with kids that just haven't got that male role model in their life, and it makes a difference. It really does.
Oh God,
It's a
yeah,
huge difference.
I mean, we all need support, and yeah, that's the thing. And I think we live in a world now where we're taught to be as independent as we can,
Mm,
but it's not. I don't think it's the answer. Every single person, no matter who you are, we all need support. We know we can't do everything on our own. So I think
mm.
it's just such an important thing.
I agree, and quite often in the work that I do, it's thinking, getting all the evidence together, gathering it together, and then trying to work out what's the right support at the right time at the right level. And if you can get those three things, that mix going right, quite often you'll see good results.
Yep.
If the person is ready to engage, that's the caveat. But yeah, right support, right level, right time, and you can see some magic, and throw a bit of patience and belief in there as well, and really good things can happen. I've seen it. I know it can happen.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
Mm.
Well, yeah, thank you so much for, being so open and sharing
Cool.
your story. I think, like we were saying before, you might not completely agree, but I think it is incredibly brave and courageous, and will be changing lives.
That's right.
We finish every episode with 5 closing questions.
Come on,
Before
let's
we
get into it.
we'll get into it. Is there anything else you wanted to sort of add, or any final messages before we go into that? I mean, we've covered quite a
uh,
lot there.
just so many people that have. Oh, look, when the article came out, it would have shocked a lot of people. I know it would have. I know it did. But the support's been overwhelming. Just wonderful support from people I don't even know.
Yeah,
But I'm determined that there will be a good ending story to this. I'm determined to work with Cricket Australia to make sure that that's the case. I don't want to. There's no point in just bagging out Cricket Australia. I think there's an opportunity
yeah.
here to work with them. So I'm looking forward to working with them in whatever way, shape, or form that heads. Yeah,
That's great. Well, yeah, thank you again, mate, for sharing it.
cool.
So we'll jump into these questions.
Yeah,
See how we go.
yeah.
So first one, what's your best childhood memory that comes to mind?
So we lived in Ely Road, Box Hill South, and in our backyard we had a concrete pitch, and then we ended up putting some synthetic garden grass on it. And one afternoon we had a bloke called Paul Rifle, who's my good mate, and a bloke called Julian Wiener, who played cricket for Australia. So going head to toe in our backyard cricket pitch with Paul running down the driveway, letting the ball go just where the cobblestones are. And Julian, thing is, we didn't tell Julian there's a crack in the wicket. Um, thankfully, it didn't hit the crack and didn't break his jaw. But that always cracks me up. We used to have the floodlights on. We used to play floodlight cricket till 10 o'clock at night. Must have driven the neighbours bloody crazy. But
I
that
love
was
that.
always good fun.
I
Yeah.
love those memories. As you're saying that,
Mm,
I've having pictures, memories of being in the park until 10 at night, kicking the football
mm,
around, and all those things you do as kids. It's
yeah.
yeah, great memories. I love that.
Yep. No, it was good fun. You just stay outside until Mum says now dinner's on the table. So things are different
Exactly.
these days. Yeah.
Oh, it's sad. I mean, I feel lucky that I think I
No
just
backyards, mate.
missed. No, it's horrible. Kids are growing up with a screen
Mm,
in front of them, and it's
not
just
good.
it's a different thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's crazy. What do you think is currently the biggest burden on mental health in society?
Oh boy. When you say burden on mental health, so just break that down a little bit. So you would just that question, just unpack that a little bit for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty trying to distill a very complicated question into
Mm,
a short answer. So, what I'd say by burden, a lot of people would say social media, or it could
mm.
be, anything in that area. Like
Yeah,
what's sort of or one of the big things.
social media definitely lending. I'm going to say resilience. There just seems to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
there just seems to be. And I don't want to say it was different in my day, but kids just don't seem to be resilient these days. There just seems to be that lack of grit, that to bounce back up, and I don't know. Yeah, it's not good.
I think that's a big one. Yeah,
Mm,
when I think it's sort of probably being. I mean, it's gone too far the other way. I think where
it has.
it's great to
Everyone's
be
a winner,
nurtured, which
but
doesn't
not
doesn't
everyone's
set
a
you up.
winner.
Well, that's not
No,
how the world works, is it? It's not
it's
gonna.
not.
Yeah,
It's not. Everyone gets a prize. Well, mm, that's not how it works.
yeah. You
Anyway.
might feel good as a kid, but once you leave school, leave the
Mm,
nest, you're gonna really be thrown in the deep end because it's just not
mm.
how it works. So yeah, that's an interesting
I
one.
mean, you see that when kids leave. 'Cause I used to work at UTAS with student recruitment. So you see kids that are really academically brilliant Year 12 students. They come into the university environment, and that culture shock, academic culture
Mm,
shock, where they're used to people tapping them on the shoulder, but no one's going to tap you on the shoulder to say, "Hey, you should have been at that lecture." So there's that lack of resilience to think, well, actually, the answers aren't going to be fed to me on a plate. No, 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 you've got to go and get them. So
yeah,
this is that transition into adulthood or university. It's just that resilience to try and do things for kids. So it's okay to be. And we've talked about vulnerability. Without vulnerability, you don't grow.
no,
Without failing, you don't grow. Failing's good. Learning how to fail well is good. Failing bad is not good. But we're not letting our kids fail.
yeah, yeah. I
It's
love that.
strange.
I love what you've said there, and I talk about that a lot with failing. I think failing should be seen as learning because you're going to learn a hell of a lot more from failing than just getting what you want all the time, and that's where
Yeah.
if we can apply that learning to, you know, look at it, how can we take something
Mm,
away from that and improve? That's where you really grow,
mm.
and that's how you get the results. So yeah,
Well, there's a thing in disability support called duty of care. Most of us know what duty of care is, but there's something more important called dignity of risk. So dignity of risk is okay. I might have a disability, but I've got every right to be ripped off by getting shortchanged at banjos as you have. Why
mm,
can't I? I've got every right to go on the monkey bars and fall off and break my leg, rather than have a
yeah,
support worker say, no, 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 don't do that because you'll fall off and break your leg. Well, it's my right to break my leg. It's that
yeah.
dignity of risk. And we,
That's
we seem
yeah.
to be we seem to have lost that dignity of risk there. Let people take risks because without risk they don't grow. Anyway, probably
That's
subject for another day.
Well, yeah, I think we could almost record a whole podcast
We
episode
probably
on
could.
on just that topic, mate. So we might have to do a round two, just talking about that area
Dignity of
because
risk.
yeah, that's interesting.
Mm.
Um, what is your personal definition of happiness?
Oh, choice and control. Simple
Yeah,
as that.
yeah,
In everything.
love that.
Everything. Yeah, just keep it simple. Choice and control. When you think about what's happening in Israel at the moment, it's just
Oh,
for choice and control. It's just horrible. I don't want to think about it actually,
unfathomable.
but you got to because it's real. But couldn't imagine it. Just
It's
having
horrific.
no choice and no control. Just horrible. Absolutely horrible.
I You couldn't think of anything worse. It's just like yeah, it's hard. Like you're saying, you don't
No,
want to think about it, but we
you
we
have to.
have to.
You
But
have
it's
to think
just
about it.
it's shocking.
Yeah.
It's really shocking.
So I'll go choice and control any day. Yeah.
I love that. What are you most afraid of?
Well, it's funny. I'm certainly not afraid of dying. I'd say boredom.
Yeah,
I, I'm in trouble if I'm bored.
yeah,
Not worried about dying. That's yeah, just tick that box when it comes. But it's more yeah, just bored. Scared
yeah.
shitless of getting bored. I've got to have the next big thing, to look forward to.
Yeah,
If
that
there's
makes
not one there,
sense.
I'll go and find one.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
that makes sense, mate. Well, I'm still terrified of dying, so I might have to have a chat to you about it. You might have to teach me how to get over that one.
Well, you've said it
Yeah.
yourself. I've heard it on your podcast. That's look, we're all going to die.
Yeah, we can't avoid it.
No,
It's fact. So yeah,
it's like tax, mate. It's
exactly.
like tax.
Yeah, unfortunately. Well, final one. What are you most proud of?
I think right here talking to you, I'm really, really proud of that. I've brought myself to a point where I'm really happy to contribute or be serviceable, have a purpose, and talk to people like yourself on platforms like this. But you know, I'm quietly chuffed about Adam's case at the moment, and with the Footscray Footy Club, I'm really, really happy for him, and I hope he gets justice. And that's, yeah, I'm really proud of that.
Yeah, well, I think there's a huge amount to be proud of, mate. And again, so great to meet you and appreciate you coming and sharing the story on here. And I know,
Cheers, Nick.
yeah, and I know for a fact it will help a lot of our listeners. So really appreciate it and great to connect with you.
Good on you, mate. Good to talk to you. Have a good day.
Appreciate it, mate. Cheers.
See ya.
Thanks to Jamie Mitchell for joining me today for Move Your Mind. Also, a huge thank you to those of you listening. I really appreciate your support. If you'd like to learn more or connect with me personally, visit www.nickbracks.com or send me a DM on Instagram at nickbracks. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button, leave a like or comment, share with your friends, and follow me on Instagram. It really makes a difference. Thank you so much.